Oh, hello. We're on episode number 159 of This Week in WordPress. I am almost crying with laughter. I don't know if either Micehlle or Tim managed to see that. If you're watching the little icons of Paul Lacey basically dances during the little intro music. Only this time he was dancing and giving it some muscle at the same time. It was very entertaining.
Guns, yeah. I don't think Tim and Micehlle see it. I think it's only you that can see what's going on.
Oh, in that case, I know why.
It's my favorite 1 minute of the week. Honestly,
that's
the bit where the music comes on. I love it because I know I can get a rise from you.
It works every week. Anyway, we're on episode 159 of This Week in WordPress. We're not here to talk about Paul's guns. We're here to talk about WordPress. But if it's okay, I am going to hand over to Paul. Paul Lacey obviously joins us every week as the co-host. Paul, it's sort of become a bit of a tradition that you introduce the guests, so I'm going to let you introduce our guests for today.
Yeah, hello everybody. So today we've got Micehlle and Tim. So I'll introduce Micehlle first. Micehlle Frechette is head of customer success at GiveWP, which is the donation plugin for WordPress, and also works in the customer success team, working with fundraisers all over the world to make a better place, to make the world a better place. I'm really fudging this one today, aren't I? I've been spending too much time messing around dancing. Anyway, part of that is helping customers evaluate their websites and researching what works to convert site visitors and supporters to donors. And there's a ton of other stuff that Micehlle does as well that she hasn't written in her intro here, but I'm sure we're going to get into some of that later on. Tim, I'm going to try and do a better job for you, dude. Tim is a WordPress security geek. He is generally found yelling, "Update all the things." He helps organizations stay safe and secure on the web through consultancy and training, including public workshops.
Very nice. Well, thank you.
Sorry, Micehlle.
That's okay.
Micehlle it's very early in the morning where Micehlle is, and her office environment is full of people coming in and making coffee, and it's quite nice to actually see, because the rest of us are stuck in rooms in our house, I'm presuming, and you're actually mixing and mingling with other people, which is nice.
We're all vaccinated, which is a wonderful thing. So
nice. That is nice. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to share my screen, if that's all right, and we'll get stuck in. Just a couple of bits of sort of, advertising, I guess. Head over to wpbuilds.com. That's the website where we produce all of our content each week. I'm going to keep this really simple. And if you go to this page, wpbuilds.com/subscribe, then you can find all of the places where we put that content and subscribe to newsletters and YouTube channels and all of that good stuff. But I would like to mention this. This is something that I'm organizing with a good friend, Anshan LaRue. It's called the Page Builder Summit. We ran it in October last year, and it was really well received. I was really pleased with the way it went, and so we decided we'd do it again. And if you're looking at the screen, you can see the dates. It's on this year from the 10th to the 14th of May. And I'm trying to encourage people just simply to go and click this button and join our waitlist, and then we'll be able to notify you when it's actually all happening. So that's pagebuildersummit.com, and get yourself signed up. Okay, let's get actually stuck into the proper news from this week. I didn't have a lot to say about this one because for some reason it didn't captivate me, but it's captivated Tim. So I'm going to just briefly say that you should update all the things in capitals, which Tim is nodding at. Very good. And WordPress 5.7.1 rolled along this week with considerable lack of fanfare, I might say. It really sort of eclipsed me until it had happened, that it was going to happen. But it's a security patch. There's a couple of things that have been mentioned in the article that I'm linking to on wordpress.org/news. But I'm going to let Tim take it over because it sounded like he had more to say about it than I did. So, Tim, the ball is in your court.
Okay, well, the reason that I find this one particularly interesting, and it connects to a couple of things that maybe we'll talk about later in the episode as well, is that this is one of the few times where there is a WordPress vulnerability that doesn't require you to chain a lot of things together to exploit. So one of the particular exploit that is interesting to me was the XXE exploit, which many people who hear various acronyms might not have even come across as an acronym. And it's the XML external entity exploit. And basically, it's using an XML document to extract data from your computer, such as, or rather from your server, such as, I don't know, your WP config file or /etc/password. For example, these sort of things. And how this particular exploit works is that there was a bug in the media library. So XML is you think of it as just a text document, but it's a very powerful data format. And one of the things you can do with it is you can, in your XML document, say, I want to get information from this other XML document or from this other source. And that can be an external URL, or it could be a local file on your machine. So if you can upload an XML document to a server and say, pass this, and then also get the information from this location. And depending on what's passing it, it might well go, oh, yes, that's fine. I'll grab that information and display it to you as part of the XML document I'm building. So this can be quite powerful and scary. Now, the exploit used the media library, and it's specific to PHP 8 because basically within the media library, you have MP3 files, which you can upload. And inside MP3 files is an XML document, which is ID-free metadata. And that metadata basically allows you to have information about the author and bits and pieces. Why this is fun for me is that I was hacking around with ID-free metadata like 13, 15 years ago. And for a BBC Hack Day project, we actually exposed the same metadata and effectively the same sort of exploit, but the idea to build a web server on an MP3 file so that you could just serve HTML content or XHTML content from the MP3 file. And that was sort of what we were doing 12, 15 years ago. So when I saw it today or last week, I'm there going, hey, that's really cool. It's the same exploit being used in a different, obviously a malicious way rather than an interesting way. But yeah, the moral of this story is XML is incredibly powerful, and that includes SVGs. Don't just let random SVGs upload, just like you wouldn't, and just be aware that XML is quite dangerous and fun.
And but this is all now patched and fixed, and everybody should be happy once they've got to 5.7. Well, I mean, there's probably a whole range of other things which are as yet undiscovered. But yeah. Okay.
It was only exploitable if you had PHP 8 on because of the way that the config flags work. Someone thought it did something that it didn't do. So. Okay.
Wow, Tim.
And you do need to still publicly upload the MP3 file. So it wasn't that easy to exploit, but it was more that it was just a really interesting attack vector.
Yeah, that is interesting, and just really, really glad that you're on to explain stuff like that, because I think I would struggle without somebody like Tim. So thank you. That's really good. Good to know. So go and update. I'm sure you have done that already, but if
it also really shows you that there are different levels of geekiness. Like there is the I can program my VCR, and there's XML files are fun.
Yeah, you see.
And now we know where Tim falls in that spectrum.
Yeah. If there was a
XML
spectrum,
files are fun.
Yeah. That is the episode title for this week. XML files are fun. Somebody write that down quickly. XML files are fun. We'll call it that. Already decided. It can't go any better than that.
I like it.
Yeah. So that was on WordPress.org, and we're going to flip now to Paul. Paul's going to introduce. Actually, Paul, during the last couple of minutes, has managed to grow a dog. And
just back to the 5.7.1 thing. There's we always just dismiss that as like, yeah, it just means you can update the thing now without it breaking or something. There's nothing much in there. But there is, these point releases have got some super important things in them, and that we just totally miss. There's so much going on under the, behind the scenes with this, WordPress and stuff that we're just most of the time ignorant to. In terms of my dog news, I was just saying just before the show, actually, my dog's just come back from the groomer, so she's had a haircut, and she's totally attached to me. So when she comes back from the groomers, she just goes crazy on me. There's absolutely nothing I can do apart from just cradle her and just reassure her that everything is okay. Don't worry, you're back. You look good. So apologies that the dog keeps poking her head into the camera. I literally can't stop her.
Can I just say, I'm now completely torn. I've got two possible titles already. I've got XML files are fun, or in terms of my dog news, which is also another possibly great working title. It
depends. You got to go with the title that pulls in the biggest audience. So there's some proper niches there. So we should split test this with your plugin, A/B split test. To be honest, Nathan, shouldn't we? See which one pulls in the most millions of users. So in a minute she'll calm down anyway, but we can move on to this one in the meantime. And so what we knew last week was that some of the top brass at WordPress.org were meeting to discuss whether or not full site editing would be put into core WordPress in version 5.8. And there was a meeting on April 14th, and Josefa Hayden Chomposi was in it, and Matt Mullenweg was in it, and some of the other people that are listed down the page were in that meeting. And first of all, just to say, it was actually super interesting because they recorded the meeting, and this is just like a normal Zoom call with just some regular people talking. But these people are making a really super important decision for the future of WordPress and the direction it goes. And you get to sort of see what the dynamic of that kind of conversation is. And they forget almost immediately that this is called and this is recorded and that people are going to be watching this. So it's really interesting just to see how that conversation goes at that level. Anyway, the news is that the majority, as far as I understand, of the features that they were talking about putting into 5.8 from full site editing have been approved to go in, with some things that have been not approved. And I think the reason is that they feel confident that they can get the majority of these things done by version 5.8. But one of the reasons they want to get it in there is so that the third parties and the rest of the community can start playing with this full site editing thing and seeing how people can creatively plug into it. One thing that I think we have to sort of realize now is that it's happened, it's happening, it's going to be in core. So whether we like how it works or not, I've tried it. I kind of did some of the volunteer testing, and I didn't really like it that much how it worked. But I think if they are getting it out to the third party and the rest of the community to develop this, and I'm pretty sure that I can see some of the companies and some of the different brands and some of the individuals working on this in a way that is going to make it all super nice and useful for us. So it seems that full site editing will be something that will be there, that you can use it if you want, and I imagine third parties will adapt it to make it more usable for us kind of mere humans and everything. But it's going in, and so there's probably a bunch of things that I've missed in there. Tim, especially, you kind of have a lot more knowledge, I think, about these kind of core releases and everything. But apparently it's going in 5.8.
Thank you. The video was quite interesting, wasn't it? Because as you said, it quickly became just a chat amongst what I'm imagining a fairly... Well, I imagine they're quite close to each other. They probably speak to each other quite a lot. So it had that. Well, it just felt like me and you, Paul, having a bit of a natter on a Friday afternoon. It was really nice to watch. There's a couple of pieces though. The first one that I'm showing now is on make.wordpress.org. All the links, as always, will be in the show notes when this comes out tomorrow. But also, that was quite interesting. There's the full site editing version on the WP Tavern, where Justin sort of sums up everything that went in there. There's the video itself, and he talks about the fact that there's this page template editor, which he was sort of quite keen to see in, and various other bits and things. And then some random dude dropped in a comment, which was the only one.
Apparently that was the top comment.
That was the top comment. Everything else just got deleted because it wasn't as worthy as Paul Lacey's comment. Incidentally, Paul, good job with the gravatar there.
I don't know where that comes from. That's what I actually
gravatar.com in all likelihood. Anybody got anything to add to this? Excited about this full site editing 5.8?
You can't not be excited. No, so I actually really like the page templating idea. It seems like really nice. Boy, is it confusing.
Yeah.
There's menus everywhere. There are buttons everywhere, and it's got no consistent language style to it. Things are renamed and repurposed, a lot of this will be ironed out, so it's not very unfair to look at it and go no. And it's just, they're doing a lot better job at communicating this stage than they did previously. There was a lovely comment on the video where Helen just sort of said, you could see that they've been nattering away for a little bit, and Helen just suddenly goes, oh, I know this is being recorded, but, and then goes off on a. I was like, yeah, it's really nice to see that they're at least trying to communicate this properly this time. And one of the things that was mentioned in the call was this idea of having a labs or something to differentiate it away from the term alpha and beta, to explain that this is still experimental and that this is going to develop and grow over time. And I can't help but think if Gutenberg had come in with a labs comment attached to it, and they'd ran with Classic Editor and Gutenberg side by side more easily to switch between, and Gutenberg had been in a labs phase, then there would have been a much better reception. So I think they're doing quite well with this idea that at least they're communicating it better, even if I'm still there going, I don't know what any of the buttons do, and I'd be terrified to press anything because I'd screw it up.
They did make the point that that there is going to be a lot of renaming, because a lot of they used a very clever word, nomenclature. A lot of the nomenclature has been kind of like mucked up, shall we say, and words that really that people who are experienced with WordPress probably use are unfamiliar to people who are now suddenly going to have to start delving into editing their own sites, headers and footers, whereas before they just installed a theme and it took care of all that for them. So that was quite interesting. And Peter Ingersoll has dropped a nice comment in it saying, yeah, it was really interesting to watch Matt Giuseppe and the others candidly discuss WordPress. And I think you're right, Tim. I think they have actually taken on board all of the comments that were made when post Gutenberg, where that just kind of got dropped, and a lot of people were really, really, shall we say, cross about it, because there wasn't the feeling of consultation. And I don't know, honestly, I don't know what they could have done more than an hour and a half's video to demonstrate that they were talking about it and discussing it. And, you may disagree with the decisions in certain parts, but at least they were publishing it. That is their decision-making process. It's basically a boardroom with the doors flung open. And I commend them for that. That was really great to see. Micehlle, have you got anything to add on this?
I mean, I'm coming from a non-developer standpoint, and just love the fact that 2 of the 6 names involved in that conversation were women, and how I am about representation, and so I think that's great. I would have loved to see it be 3 out of 6, but 2 out of 6 is a good start for sure. But as far as everything else goes, I can see a lot of us spinning up sites just to play before we ever start to do anything with production, because, as you say, when you start to change the nomenclature, you start to change the way things behave, especially with page builders and things like that. We're going to want to play with it a lot before we understand how it really works.
Yeah, it was really, I can't remember if it was this piece. No, it's a piece that we're going to come to later, so I will pause on that. And we'll segue, if that's all right. We're going to segue to something which is slightly different from the order on the sheet. No, it's not. It's been changed. That's fine. So here we go. Now I'm going to firmly. Sorry, Paul.
Sorry, can I just add one thing? I just wondered, how long has Giuseppe been in the role that she is in?
6
in
years.
WordPress.org? So as that particular role.
Yep.
Yeah, because it just seems to me that I didn't I mean, this is so ignorant of me. I'd never heard of her before about a year ago, which is crazy, right? But now, like in the last 6 to 9 months, I just feel like she's communicating to us all so much. And I think it's just really following on for that comment about how they've improved communication. It seems that Josepha has done something or made some decision, or some people have made some decision, and she's followed that up and said, right, I'm taking this on now. I'm going to say things and invite response. And so I just think she's doing a good job with whatever. I wasn't sure if she just was new in the post in the last couple of years or something, but yeah, something's changed, and she feels accessible now. She feels the whole system feels much more accessible than it was with the whole Gutenberg thing, like you said.
Sorry, Micehlle.
There's 2 reasons that transparency lacks in most organizations. One is it's deceitful, right? So we try to hide things and be transparent. The other is that things happen so quickly and things happen so rapidly, and there's so many people involved that transparency falls by the wayside. And I think that neither of those things, were intentional. I don't think that there was a lot of deceit in the past, and I'm sure there will be people who will disagree with me on that. But I also think that when things happen as quickly as they do, with as many people involved as there are in the open source project, that transparency actually becomes a burden, because there's so much involved in making sure that everybody knows what's happening. And I think that Josepha has done a really good job in the last, as you say, 9 months to a year, perhaps even a little bit longer, in making sure that it's actionable, that the transparency is at the forefront, and that nothing is hidden and therefore assumed deceitful as opposed to assumed overlooked.
Yeah. So she took on the role 6 years ago, and there's obviously much that I don't know about all of the work that she does, but I did, by coincidence, recorded a podcast episode with her probably about 6 weeks ago, something like that. And she made the point that she went on kind of like a 6-month, I'm going to say binge for want of a better word, a 6-month binge trying to figure out what had been miscommunicated after Gutenberg. And I don't know who she spoke to and what that process involved, but she deliberately made it her cause to figure out what had gone wrong. And just in these last few weeks, she's been everywhere. She's got a new podcast which she's producing every few weeks, which explains on a high level what's been happening in the last couple of weeks. That's commendable. Loads of blog posts coming out on make.wordpress.org. She's appearing on lots of podcasts, and she's so communicative. It's amazing. And so I think she's doing an incredible job. Can you imagine how busy she is on a day-to-day basis, and still makes the time to write blog posts and record a podcast and go on other people's podcasts and all of that? I think she must really spend a very large proportion of her waking time doing this.
She's a genuinely nice person. If you've ever met her face to face, she is actually just a very genuinely lovely person.
Yeah. So bravo. We've had a few nice comments. Daniel, thank you. He said that he thinks that appreciates the transparent communication led by Josepha. So, okay. All right, we're going to pivot slightly, moving away from the community. Now, this is a story which I'm just going to put it on the screen because the screen's not showing at the moment. Okay, and I'm going to turn this one back over to Tim, because it turns out in our pre-record conversation, Tim knows significantly more about this than I do. I'm just going to paraphrase it. I'm going to say Google, and forgive me, Tim, if I get this wrong. Google have this initiative called FLOC, FLOC. And it's a way of kind of making it so that you can be tracked but not tracked. So instead of being pixeled and individually pixeled so that you are uniquely identifiable, I feel that it's more about putting you in a pen with a ton of other people and saying, your behavior looks like you are this. And you will be siloed in that little pen. Maybe it'll have a tag or a number or something. And for a couple of weeks, ads will be served to you based upon the little cohort that you're in and the behavior that you've displayed. And then every few weeks, you'll be recycled and you'll go into another little cohort because all of a sudden you've been searching for holidays instead of dog food or whatever. But you can imagine the concern amongst the community, because this, whilst it might not allow people like Facebook to gather data, it feels like it's giving Google all the cards in the deck. And Tim, just pull to pieces everything that I've said because I know I've probably
Can I
butchered
just
it horribly.
add one thing to that? Because I don't really understand what this is, so I'm really looking forward to Tim telling us. But I can see on the make.wordpress.org site in the course section that, and I don't know if this happens every time there's a new post that everybody is discussing it, but the amount of comments on this is quite significant. So whoever does know about this, clearly it's a big talking point. And so, yeah, sorry, Tim, over to you. I just could see there was so much discussion going on in here. And again, this is one that probably went past myself and Nathan as something we probably just didn't really understand that much. So yeah, if you could help fill us all in, that'd be great.
To sort of put this in perspective, at the moment, if you run a business selling pet grooming kit and you want to advertise to pet groomers, so you go on to Google and you get some ads and you say, I would like to target people who have dogs. And I don't know, and are male and are 23 and, you know, however you want to set it up. You set up your adverts and it runs and you get targeted adverts and so you're spending your money and you know your advert is going out to dog lovers. How that works behind the scenes is that Google has managed to get itself on enough sites where it's collecting information about you, and it basically uses a cookie to do that. So you're cookied across these multiple sites. Now, so do many others do this. Facebook, every major advertising platform uses cross-domain cookies. The thing is, that's creepy as anything, and we don't like that as generally as a community. It's like, well, it might be great that, you know, the dog groomer gets to advertise directly, but what about when they start doing it about your sexuality or baiting on other targeting? This isn't good. What happens when I'm going to certain sites that I just genuinely don't want to have associated with my profile? In those scenarios, it's all bad. So basically, browsers have all pretty much agreed we're going to drop this ability to do cross-domain cookie. Now, this included Google, but Google obviously don't want to lose their ad revenue, so they've come up with the idea, of Flock. And a Flock as a name is weird because they've basically come up with a bunch of other technologies that have all got bird names that are all related to advertising. And then Flock is a way of unifying it. You can see someone spent a lot of time coming up with the acronym rather than necessarily the technology protocol. But yeah,
that tells you that marketing was involved.
Yeah.
It's big money. Yes. But what you said before, Nathan, is pretty much spot on. The idea is that the browser itself will start to collect data. So this would only affect customers who are using Chrome or a Chromium-based browser. Now, people, for example, Brave is a privacy-focused browser, and they basically get their code from Chrome. Now, they've said, okay, we're going to take out that feature, funnily enough. But somebody who was, say, using Firefox, this just wouldn't affect them because Mozilla have no intention of putting with this sort of targeting into their browser at the moment. But Google is pushing for this to be a standard across the board to provide a semi-privacy conscious. It's not privacy conscious at all. It could easily be abused to get this sort of half anonymized targeting in place. Now, the proposal in WordPress is to say that Google have said that, you know, if you're a website and you don't want to be involved in this, you can opt out by setting a permissions policy header. And within that, you can specify that you don't want to advertise to it. So basically, anybody who comes to your site won't be tracked by the system. Sort of, we promise maybe, yeah, we don't always obey headers, but we'll try to remember this the best we can. Now, this is the equivalent of the plans for the destruction of the planet are downstairs in the toilet and, you know, locked in the cabinet with the beware of the panther sign. It's the same sort of level. This isn't something your average person is likely to go and do. Set up a HTTP header using a particularly new type of HTTP header. Permission policies headers are relatively new. it's just awkward. It's not an easy way to opt out. So the proposal on WordPress.org is that WordPress should automatically opt you out. Now, it's worth emphasizing this is a proposal by 1 or 2 people. This is not yet a thing that is going to happen. You can sort of see why it might not happen. There is obviously lots of politics involved with big companies who are pro and against this sort of thing. But the bigger part of this was that the suggestion that this should be released because it was a security issue, not necessarily just a privacy one. Now, for some people, they argue it is a security issue because your website would be leaking potentially personal information out. The counter argument to that is the persons whose information would be leaked to Chrome, which they've opted into, so it isn't really a leak. But the bigger argument is, should we be using the security release system to release features and backport features across? And that is a blurry line that most people seem to be arguing over whether it's right or wrong. If you go through those comments, and I know I've put a comment in there, there are lots of other people in the WordPress community. Lots of them are very pro this and saying we should implement this as soon as possible. A few more are saying we should implement this. This is a lot more complicated than you think. And then there's another group that are saying this is not necessarily a issue for WordPress. This is a issue that could be opted in via a plugin if you want to do this. I sit in this would be a very cool feature to have. I don't think it should use the security release mechanism, because the last thing I want is we had both of you on earlier saying how wonderful automatic updates are, how you didn't know anything had happened. Well, that whole making sure it just works, that we don't add new features, it just fixes bugs and it just fixes security issues is vital. Because if we start fiddling and saying, we're adding a new feature to your site, even though you never asked us to, then website owners might go, well, okay, that's great. I don't want Flock, but what if you start ramming Gutenberg on me? Do you want that?
Yeah.
And the answer is going to be no. So they're going to turn off their updates. And that could actually cause a genuine security issue. So I'm more, from my perspective, that's the thing that worries me of this proposal, is that someone is going to say, no, I'd rather turn off my website on principle, turn off my updates to my website on principle, rather than have the potential where this line disappears and gets blurry.
Yeah, it just takes like a little rumor, like, oh, did you hear you should turn off your updates? You know, and you know, hundreds of thousands of people will be like, yeah, I heard that you should turn off the updates because of this thing or whatever. And okay, then I'll do that. Should I do that on my website? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, my friend told me you should do that. And then, you know, that spreads, and they can't update all the things then.
I'm really
just
curious.
1% turn off their automatic updates.
Yeah,
1% of 40.
There's a lot of websites. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think we might have some sort of audio overlap thing going on here. Apologize to those people listening who are listening to me just constantly interrupting people. I do apologize. The thing that I'm curious about is I think this is quite a neat idea. The idea of kind of anonymizing, I should say, by putting you into cohorts. Now, I'm not sure what the cohort size will be. I'm guessing if you're in the, I don't know, I like pop music cohort, you're probably going to be in amongst millions, possibly billions of others. But if you're in the I like chihuahuas and something else cohort, then it might be considerably smaller, and so your anonymity might be lessened. But the thing, I suppose, which gives me pause is that this is going to be in the browser. I'm sure they'll communicate it to those people interested, but I'm just slightly concerned that Google, in anonymizing it, they're anonymizing it for everybody else except themselves, because, well, I don't know the technology behind Flock. I'm guessing there'll be checks and balances, but still it puts Google in that very dominant position in terms of advertising. And you can imagine the Facebook browser, hot on the heels of all of this, Chromium-based browser built by Facebook just to get themselves back in the game. Facebook are taking it from every angle at the minute, and I feel like this is just another hit at them, which Fair enough. Micehlle, anything?
I mean, I'm always torn because my background's in marketing and I like access to information, but I'm also an individual who likes my privacy. So it depends on which side, which part of the conversation I'm on. But yeah, I guess I can see both sides, but I really err on the side of privacy.
It's a really interesting one because if you go back, let's say 20 years to prior to
it's also
the
worth
internet.
remembering that.
No, I do, Tim. I think you and I, for some reason, I think we're like seconds apart from each other. You carry on. I apologize.
There's a massive lag at the moment, but it's worth emphasizing that the browser itself can be fingerprints you quite neatly, and your interest groups will fingerprint you very quickly. You might be one of millions interested in pop, but your specific interests in that thing you did at the weekend, which you'd rather not talk about on air, combined with your current location because you Googled the opening times for your supermarket, combined with your map result search, combined with this and combined with that, suddenly those interest groups, you might be in individual interest groups for each one of those, but the combination of that is very targeted. It wouldn't take very much to identify you as an individual from those interest groups.
Got a nice comment from Chris here about us talking over each other. Before we began the call, Chris, it was pretty obvious that something was broken. I don't quite know what's happening, but I can see Tim in real time. He can see, I think, me in real time, but for some reason we're out of sync with each other. And so something peculiar and a bit strange is going on. Yeah, this is to Micehlle. I'm curious about this because the promise of all of this stuff in the marketing arena is that the hyper targeting of everything will lead to a significantly better experience in terms of the end user because we'll receive ads that are potentially of more interest to us. Also, it will reduce spend on the advertising side because you won't be throwing money at a television ad, which is mostly at, for people who've got no interest in the product that you're dealing with. Have we reached this kind of nirvana state? Have we got to the point where it really does, this advertising stuff is working in our benefit, would you say? Because you were sort of conflicted over whether or not that was good or not.
So as a marketer, it's wonderful, of course, right? But as a consumer, isn't it creepy? Isn't it creepy when you've done some browsing and then suddenly you're being served ads for things, or I've seen people say, well, all I did was talk about it near my phone and suddenly I'm getting ads for XYZ. And is it something that if, let's say I'm using a browser with family and I've been searching things. I'm a 52-year-old woman. I'm not having any more children, but let's say that I'm worried that I'm pregnant and I start to search things about pregnancy and I start to search things about clinics and I start to search for OBGYNs and I clear my browser, but the next person that comes in is starting to get served up ads along those lines. At what point is it safe? And at what point is my privacy more important than being served an ad?
Yeah, again, talking about going back 20 years, if we rewound the clock and I don't know, let's say 80 years or something, there's no way that people are going to be able to give up television now. Television is just such a mainstay of everybody's lives. It's quite normal. I'm just wondering how far the cat is out the bag with all this fingerprinting and technology to allow marketers to do their very best to make sure that we see exactly what they want us to see. And so what I'm really thinking is how hard is it going to be to make the argument that this stuff is scary because it shows, in my case, I really do see the benefit when I go onto Google. I do genuinely see advertising for the things that I want to see. It's very rare that I'll see something which is utterly, wildly, outlandishly off my radar. So the privacy conscious amongst us see privacy violations all over the place, and we just run scared, and the sky is falling in. But I don't know if that's what the general population believe. I'm sure that maybe most people just don't care. It's fine.
I also wonder, I often wonder about incognito browsers. And I know that my incognito browser can, spare the other people who may be looking at my computer. But is incognito browser really that incognito from Chrome? Do they still know it's me? Do they still serve me ads for things that I search there? I don't know the answer to that because I haven't delved in far enough with that. And Tim's smiling; he might have some information about that. but I can see a lot more incognito surfing in the future if we start to feel creeped out by the ads that are served up to us.
Just as a question there, Tim, I hope that your audio, Tim's refreshed the browser, so maybe things will have repaired themselves. I don't know. I'm curious on your setup, Tim. What is it that you use to browse the internet on a daily basis?
It looks like there's still a lag.
I think Tim can't hear a word I'm saying. I don't know.
Yeah, just at that 1 second, he just went off at the end. But I'm pretty sure he said something along the lines of, "What browser do I use?"
That's right. What's your? I don't know if you can hear me, okay, Tim. But it was, what is your setup?
Go mute.
I don't think this is. I don't think he. Well, do you know what? I'm gonna allow Tim. Who cares about the lag? It's fine. We can sit here and listen to 5 seconds of silence. It's not the end of the world. I'm going to ask that question again, Tim. I'm just curious because you have a real posture on this. What do you use? I'm on Brave. I for the life of me, I've kind of been assured that that's a pretty good option if I want to block certain things, but I don't really know.
Okay, so if you're really privacy conscious, there are privacy specific browsers. Brave is one example. Brave is run by a company, so whereas something like Firefox is run by Mozilla, who are a non-profit organization. Personally, I use Firefox for my day-to-day browsing. Honestly, I don't need to have that set up particularly. I don't have too many other. I have a ad blocker on there. But actually at home, I use something called Micehlle, which is a little service that runs on a Raspberry Pi that does a lot of ad blocking for everybody in the house. That way, I don't need to worry about having to configure tablets and things to use special bits. And it also means that, my daughter doesn't like, I don't have to sort out her stuff as well. So that's how I set my bits up. But
nice.
Don't use Chrome is the answer.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, well, that was a fascinating little chat. Thank you, everybody that participated in that. That was lovely. We're going to go on to the story that keeps on giving. This is the story of Matt Mullenweg and Wix. I feel that this may go on for the well. Certainly, we've had Serve from Wix with their advert. I'm using a tennis analogy now. They did a real big wallop of a serve. Matt steps in, does a big forehand with his rebuttal piece that we're looking at the moment, where he called them out for, in inverted commas, to quote, Wix and their dirty tricks. And then this week we had the CEO of Wix, Avishai Abrami, and I hope I haven't butchered his name. He did a reply this week, and I read it, and I just kind of feel that it was a sort of, obviously I'm coming from the WordPress side of things. There is that. I've got this history of really enjoying WordPress, so I kind of want to defend it. But I felt that this piece really was kind of like a deliberate attempt to sort of divert what Matt has said. Matt kept talking about the GPL, and the guy from Wix sort of seemed to miss the point deliberately, almost like it was deliberate. It's not that he doesn't understand what's going on. But I was just curious if anybody had any thoughts on this piece and whether they'll be moving to Wix in the next couple of weeks.
Well, they didn't send me headphones, so that's okay. Actually, Chris Lama sent me new headphones that are better than that. But anyway, the whole idea behind this, I think, was, this volley back and forth. Clearly, it was just for Wix to get in the news. And I don't think that they ever intended to sway anybody that they sent the headphones to. They just really wanted to create a big splash and have people talking about them. But one of the things that I found interesting about this rebuttal was, they talk about the fact that, well, no, your content, you've always owned your content at Wix. It's your content. But they still never address the fact that you can't get it out of their system without just copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste. So with WordPress, you can export You could import into lots of other places. We've made it portable. It's easy to get your information out. Yes, sometimes you have to know how to do it or hire somebody to help you if you own a site and don't understand how to use WordPress. But with Wix, you literally have to copy and paste all of your content. It's not something that's easy to export or available to export at all.
Is it really that? Yeah, really, you've got to do that. You've got to go to each page one at a time and copy and paste it. I didn't.
There's no export feature. You cannot just export your content.
Oh.
And the design, for sure, they own all the designs. So there's no, there's no exporting anything that goes there. So even if you've customized and things like that, you're going to lose all of that.
Yeah, it says here, I'm going to quote from the piece. It says, in your recent post, he's directing this comment at Matt. In your recent post, you wrote that Wix makes it difficult to leave for customers, but this isn't true. If someone wants to cancel the subscription, all they need to do is click the button, cancel subscription. If a customer cancels within 14 days of a purchase, then getting a refund is automatic. So I'm not sure what you meant. Well,
he's clearly being obtuse.
I mean, canceling's not the same as getting your content out. I mean,
right.
Matt meant difficult to leave. In fact, I thought he was really clear about it. He meant get your content, not cancel your account. And clearly that's, he's just deliberately.
And he addresses that in the next paragraph down. If you see where he's like that it locks your content or steals it. No, of course you can always copy and paste your own content, but you can't export it easily. And that's what Matt was talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel this was a bit of a fudge. I mean, they're a commercial company. This is what they do, right? They try to keep you in there as long as possible. But anyway, Paul or Tim?
Yeah, they're coming at, that first of all, it's this is just probably part of Wix's entire plan for the whole campaign, which is just it's playground stuff. It's like, let's go and see if we can wind up that group of people over there, and then we'll have a fight. And then, and it's like the kind of lieutenants start first, sending headphones out to people, and eventually the two leaders are facing off and there's a scrap in the playground and everything. It just, and basically nothing is resolved. It's a waste of time. And eventually the next day someone else is talking about something. It just seems to me that Matt has, been goaded into making a response, and his response was probably quite predictable, but the way that Wix is attacking him back is just subverting the concepts that Matt is talking about and putting it from their own perspective. And yeah, there's definitely some things wrong in the CEO of Wix's response, but it's just a waste of time. It's just it's a waste of these people's time to be doing this, in my opinion. And I just cannot see what this is achieving, even from Wix. Just from Wix's point of view, they're getting people to talk about Wix in the community, but to what point? There is no point about this. I just don't get it. It just seems, I don't know if there is, shareholder stuff going on. There is kind of, a big deal with Wix coming up that's like, yeah, we need to create a load of buzz and it will help our share value go up if we create a load of buzz or something. I don't know, man. It's not even interesting. I don't, this kind of thing, should be interesting. We should be finding this really entertaining, but it's actually quite boring. The responses are kind of like, well, you've got an export tool. Well, you can cancel your account at any time. Oh my God, come on. Can we have a better drama than this? Sorry, I don't know what's got into me there.
There's a bit of P.T. Barnum in it, though, right? About like no publicity is bad publicity. As long as people are talking, you're relevant. And so I think there's a sense of that about it. And I think that's what Wix's purpose was in all of this. I agree. I don't think they're going to sway very many people. I think that their ads on YouTube long before this were probably more enticing to people who didn't know about how to build their own website than trying to get involved with a slinging match between the two of us.
Dare I say Tim? Let's see if Tim can hear me this time.
No, I can hear you the whole time. I just can't reply anytime soon. Just wait 5 seconds. What everybody else is saying, I don't really understand why we're talking about it. I have done for 20 minutes, to be honest.
Let's move on.
Giving them airspace that we don't need to.
Yeah, I think we should move on and kill this story from now on, and because it's
Boom,
we're just falling into the trap and talking more about Wix just giving a rise out of the WordPress community.
In which case, we will move to this piece, which is squarely where we want to be. This is over on WP Tavern. This is a piece by Justin called FSE Outreach Round 5, Venturing Out a Query Quest. And this is to say that Anne McCarthy, who is a developer, one of the automatic developer relations wranglers, she is in charge of the outreach program for full site editing. And she's now on kind of round 5. She's done various things like create a custom 404 page, and we've talked about these in the past. She lays out clear, simple instructions for what she wants you to achieve, and then the idea is that you go and try and achieve it and give her some feedback. And now we're on to round 5 with the query block, which is going to, I feel, be one of the most important developments in the block space, well, at least in core blocks, where you can obviously create different queries, and you can have it pull different things out of the database and display them in different parts of the site. It was Justin who wrote this. Yeah, it was Justin. He typically he sort of got stuck in, and he decided to go soup to nuts with it. And he found a bunch of problems, things that he wasn't able to achieve. And then Justin being Justin, he thought, right, I'm going to figure out the answer. And I'm showing on the screen what he was able to pull together. It looks like a really nice, it's a really nice sort of development. Like I said, I think it's going to be one of the more important things in the future. So really, this is a call to action. If anybody's interested in checking this out, I don't know what the date is by which submissions should be in. Can't remember what that date was, but if you click on the links inside the post that we'll link to in the show notes, you'll be able to go and have a bit of a play and probably run into some problems on the way. They're talking about getting rid of the word query, and I've forgotten what the word is they were going to substitute it with, but something much more common and sensible, whereas query to me it makes sense to us, but it perhaps wouldn't make sense to a regular user, and they've decided they're going to call it something else, but I have in fact forgotten what it was. So over to you guys if you want to discuss this one.
Stories like this often get thrown around in my local meetup, where people start to wonder if WordPress is becoming more and more difficult or complex, is probably a better word to use. And I think just the one thing I would point out in this is that no matter what gets added to WordPress, just because features are put out there doesn't mean they have to be used. So this might be a beautiful feature. It might be something that we really enjoy using. But if you're starting out and you're building your first website, it's perfectly fine to build a simple website without using all of the bells and whistles that we tend to keep putting into something like WordPress. Because something is a robust tool doesn't mean you need to use all of the features.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, really good point. Paul?
I just find it interesting that they're trying to come up with new terminology to help us all understand it better. And because I think there was a mention of that in one of the other posts that we covered today, where there was some new terminology that they were using for something. I'm wondering how easy it's going to be, for instance, to reuse some of these templates. So queries, I assume it's going to be have an inheritance sort of way that it works, and I imagine that it's going to follow the WordPress file, the structure, the hierarchy of structure, how it works. So if you, for instance, only edit one file in the full site editing, like index, the equivalent of index.php, then everything else will inherit from there. So it'll be interesting to see how that works, because what we've seen in full site editing in other systems like Beaver Themer and things like Headway Theme from way back, and Elementor has got stuff, and Divi I think as well, is that we are given a very human-friendly user interface to think about these things. We can create a template, and then we use an interface of inclusion and exclusion to decide where this template should live. And anyone who's built parent themes before child themes are even a thing, remembers the template hierarchy, and you can see that reflected in this UI, but most people don't know that that's been reflected in the UI, but you can see that it's there, and that's what it's calling upon. So I wonder how they will approach that, because when I've looked at the full site editing demos, it does take you back to a kind of virtual file system from what I could tell when I was testing it. But yeah, I think that it seems that they're doing things to make it more accessible. But I do think last week we saw this theme called Micehlle. Actually, the theme was called Micehlle.
Yeah.
And this theme that had come out was kind of starting to leverage some of the full site editing aspects, not in the way that this is doing it, but it was kind of allowing you in a customizer type view to have created some block patterns or something, and then set that block group or whatever as your header and your footer. So I just think that, you know, they're putting this thing in the core, and then whatever theme that comes out with its whatever new name that is kind of commercially viable, we'll figure out a way to make it so through a wizard or something like that. You set your site up, it's hooking itself into the full site editing, but it's taking you through a wizard. That's how I think how this thing is gonna roll out. And I think that for anyone who is thinking about doing products in the future around, you know, themes and stuff like that, it's definitely worth them taking a look at the results of this full site editing to see the shortfalls and to see, hey, there's the opportunity. They're not going to do that, are they? They're not going to fix that for people. They're going to leave that like it is, and they're going to put that in core, and that's it. It's in there now. So okay, we can go and fill that gap now. So I think it's cool from that perspective to see where they're sort of drawing the line, and where they're hoping other people will pick things up for them.
And I'm going to say the word Tim, and then we're going to wait. We're going to wait a really long time this time. I don't think Tim. I'm not sure if Tim can hear us. It's the most peculiar thing, because I can see Tim's move. I can see Tim's lips moving in complete sync. So something weird about the audio side of things. Yeah, he's giving me away. Tim, if you want to comment on that, I will shut up again. But if you don't wish to, then I will keep talking.
Just to say that the particular query block is quite cool, because if you look at all the Gutenberg block collections, they all have a recent posts one, and they all work slightly differently, and none of them work particularly like the query if you do WP query. So for the people who are more dev focused, and for people who are used to how themes work, actually you're going to get on with this block a lot more than perhaps you would do with most Gutenberg blocks.
Thank you. I guess the thing to be mindful of is that WordPress are not trying to build the perfect solution, are they? They're trying to build something other people can hook into, and like Paul said, leave plenty of scope for third parties to come along and add different features on top. But this is going to be the groundwork of how you do it in the future. And presumably there'll be a real shortcut for theme developers to put this stuff together, because you'll just build on top of what's already there. So anyway,
I think it's the right way to do it as well, because, you know, because you know, one of the scary things for me about this whole system has been, are they going to, you know, really railroad us onto, we have to do it, you have to do it this way. But if they do keep things quite conceptual at a base level and do let everybody build off that, then I feel like we're all a lot safer and we've got a lot less to worry about. And again, it just gives people choice. It gives people a new option. And I think I was talking with Anne McCarthy on Slack just last week after we'd had the show, and seeing, you know, the big hosting companies building their platforms, seeing the likes of Elementor building in what looks like a cloud solution, and then seeing Wix and seeing Squarespace and all these kind of huge brands and huge companies trying to lock us all in. There always will be this open source option for us to use in any way that we want is great. And that's why I think they should keep things simple. They don't need to push Gutenberg and full site editing too far into being a full solution that end users can go, oh yeah, I get how that works. That's easy. I think that they just develop it and make it as a stable platform for the product creators to build on top of, and the people who want to learn it.
And Micehlle made a good point, of course, is that you can always just do a nice straightforward site. You can just create blog posts and have things in a with a regular old archive and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, good point.
Just content. It's just content. We just read it on web pages. That's it.
It is content. Which segues nicely into this, actually, because this is content. This is on robertjacoby.com, and it says that HeroPress has been bought. Bought? Wrong word. What's the right word here? We said it earlier.
Acquired, adopted.
Adopted. I think adopted is the right word, isn't it? HeroPress have adopted Hallway Chats. It says it isn't an acquisition per se. Do you guys listen religiously to Hallway Chats? I have a laundry list of WordPress podcasts that I listen to, and this is on that list. But
from time to time,
yeah. And I'm really pleased to see that it's not going to stagnate. It's quite interesting. Kate DeRosier's comment, though, she's going into this with her eyes wide open, but it's not necessarily something she envisaged herself doing. She said on Twitter, "I'm not going to lie, podcasting was the last thing I thought I would ever do, that I wanted to do." Which is very, very, very honest about it. And yet the universe has a sense of humor, and so they're going to be taking it over. And in the same vein, Topher DeRosier said, "I've always wanted a podcast for HeroPress, and then when Hallway Chats came out, I realized it was the podcast that I always envisioned. So now I'm really happy to have them connected." So it looks like it's going to, instead of it disappearing off the face of the earth, it's going to some excited stewardship with people who hopefully are going to take it over. And if you follow the HeroPress side of things, then you'll know that they put an awful lot of time and effort into that. So they seem like great stewards of this, the people that have got the energy and passion to keep it going. Micehlle, it sounded like you're a bit of an advocate of this, or a fan. I'm not sure.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I have a podcast, as you know, and I tell stories about people. I enable people to tell their story, their WordPress stories, through WP Coffee Talk. And people have actually approached me and said things like, "Well, isn't this encroaching on your space? And isn't this like, something that people are doing something that's you're doing too? And what's that? And competing with you?" I said, "Well, first of all, there are thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of stories in WordPress, and there's plenty of room for us to tell them all. Secondly, no, of course not, because there's a different style. There's a different way we present things. And there's, some people may cringe at the sound of my voice, but they'll love listening to Kate do it. So, it's all beautiful, and none of us are in it to make money. I mean, if I could make, a living doing podcasting, I think that I would be an entirely different person than I am today. But the whole point is that there's so much room and there's so many stories to tell. And the fact that we all get to do it, I think, is a beautiful thing. And I think that Topher and Kate have done a beautiful job in allowing people to tell their stories through HeroPress. To put an audio component to that, where they continue Hallway Chats and marry those things together, I think is beautiful.
Nice. Paul, Tim?
Yeah, Hallway Chats is a nice podcast. I mean, that's an awful word because it's such a bland word, but it's kind of a very relaxing listen, Hallway Chats. And I think they historically with Hallway Chats always specifically would try to find people that you'd never really heard of in WordPress space. Like it was all those unsung heroes, or not even necessarily the heroes, just people who you might meet at a WordPress event or something like that, and brought those voices and those stories to be able to listen to. And I always found it a really nice listen, and I think it's really cool that it's been taken over by Topher and Kate, and I think that I know that they're going to do a great job, and they're super psyched about it as well. So and it completely just builds upon the success that they've had with HeroPress. And I hope that not only just doing it for fun or whatever it is that they're doing it for, I hope that it brings all sorts of different facets of benefit to them as the people bringing these stories forward. I know it will. It's just these kind of things just bring opportunity to the people who are guests and the people who are the hosts. So it's really good news, and a new lease of energy being injected into the whole podcast.
Okie doke. Right, we will move on. I think Tim and I have figured out a way to overcome the delay problem, and that is to write whether or not Tim wants to contribute in the comments, which is actually that's a very successful and clever way. Yeah, no, but that's really, I wouldn't have thought of doing that. That shows that Tim is clever, and I would just struggle on with great big silences. So thank you for that. I will move on and talk about the next one. Which is, I mean, who are these people? Never heard of either of them. This is nice. This is over on Post Status. I was talking about Post Status. Was it with you earlier this week, Paul? Yeah. Post Status has been going for absolutely ages, and they do a boatload of stuff. They've got podcasts. They've got a load of content. And they produce an amazing newsletter each and every week, which I consume. And they had somebody on the show this week. Micehlle Frechette. Yes, she does. In fact, I'm just looking around. No, not everybody sat in the same chairs this week, but there you are. Tell us about this. We've mentioned it before. I don't think you were on. Maybe you were on the show that day, but just to reiterate, tell us about why you were talking to Corey this week and the project that you've got going on.
Sure. So Underrepresented in Tech is specifically about helping people who are in underrepresented groups be found and be able to participate in projects and find jobs and things like that. So it's a beautiful database where people who are underrepresented can put themselves into the database. It's free, of course. We want people to be in there. And there's it's not just about people of color, but of course, absolutely people of color as well. But there's lots of ways that people can be underrepresented in technology, including, aging out, so to speak. And I'm in my 50s. I'm a woman in my 50s. I'm kind of a rare breed in technology. And so the gray hair. Yes, absolutely. I could point to mine, but I color it. So there you go. But the whole idea is that people like yourself, right, and like me and with my podcast, I can search the database and I can find more diversity to bring voices from other groups that are just myself to be included and to be heard. Because the more diversity we have, the more representation we have, the richer the experience for everybody who participates. So anybody who's listening, if you're building a product and you have more people coming in on the design side of things, you're getting better perspective and you're getting a richer experience for everybody. So the whole idea behind Underrepresented in Tech is being able to do that. And one of the things that I talked about, actually, we have a vlog now. So we're not actually putting content out through podcasting, but on the vlog every week, Allie and I just have open discussion about whatever topics. And last week, Allie was actually under the weather. She'd had her vaccination and was having the reaction that so many of us have right after that. And I had two female podcasters join me and talk about how to get on a podcast. So as you know, and as I know, people are constant. I have so many people lined up. Tim, I interviewed several weeks ago. His episode still isn't out on WP Coffee Talk because I have a backlog of things I'm trying to put out there. I promise, Tim, it's coming. But so I'm not necessarily in needing to go out and ask people to be on the podcast. So if you want to be on a podcast, there are ways to do that. And we talk all about that in underrepresentedintech.com because we do want to have better representation of the people who are in our community in the spotlight of things like podcasts, blogging, on stage and events and speaking and things like that. And so that's what Underrepresented in Tech is all about. We don't charge to be in the database. We don't charge to search the database. We don't even know who's searching the database and who's contacting whom because we're not gatekeeping any of that information. We did recently offer a for sale services, which is that we will help you look at your career page on your website and see if it really speaks to diversity and really is inviting. We're offering marketing services and things like that. And of course, we are charging for those because we have to honor our time. But the primary purpose behind the project is for people to be found, to put themselves into the database, to list those things that they're interested in, and then let people who are looking for people in that space be invited through. And all of that is always going to be free.
Thank you very much. What a valuable, project. And
thank you.
Yeah, so you can go and check the link out in the show notes.
Two of my favorite people in WordPress, Corey and Micehlle. And Corey as well is always been to me kind of a someone I kind of look up to in WordPress for his openness to bring to the table the difficult and conversations. and he's carrying, and now he's getting involved in this conversation with Micehlle as well. I haven't actually watched that interview yet, but I did watch your last vlog, with the other two podcasters, and I found that very interesting. But I am going to watch this, but it's also, the whole thing has been transcribed as well, so you can just read it as an interview if you want to as well. But how is the whole project going? I mean, that you're doing. I mean, I guess you're not, like you said, Micehlle, you're not really measuring it at the moment, which is fine. No one says that you've got to do that. You're just putting it out there and hoping. But do you get much feedback from people that you're helping at the moment?
So Give Live that we do at Give WP, we now have a co-host for that Matt Cromwell found through our database. And so we have that. I know that Ken Elliott has reached out to me and said that he's been on, I think it was Hallway Chats actually, because they found him through our database. And so, yes, we do know anecdotally it's working. Of course, not everybody gives us that feedback. And the database is growing. There's almost 70 people in there now that can be searched. We would love for people to put themselves in there who are interested, because, I mean, sorry, guys, if you're just white gentlemen who have no underrepresented qualities, you are barred from being included, but you're already represented quite a bit in our circles and in our community. But the whole idea is to bring more richness and more diversity, of course.
Can I, prompted by Tim in the chat, I want to say, thank you. He's doing a great job over on the chat, telling me all the things that I should mention.
I think Tim is the producer.
It's great. We need Tim on every week.
He's like in your ear, but don't forget to say this
visually.
It's brilliant. We need to do this more often.
I'd forgotten what Tim has remembered, and that is to say that you were going to mention the opening on the Big Orange Heart side, weren't you? Do you want to give us the details about that?
Yep. So Big Orange Heart, there's a lot going on there right now. And we are launching the next WordFest. So if you remember, we had WordFest back in January, which was a 24-hour celebration of WordPress with lots of speakers. We are doing that again in July. I'm struggling to remember the date. I think it's July 23rd. Yes, July 23rd. And it will be another 24-hour WordFest. And we are going to be opening the call for speakers, call for sponsors, volunteers. All of that will be open very soon. We are still working out some final details, as we are actually transitioning to be a U.S. charity and moving away from the UK charity, just for reach and financial purposes, since a lot of our donors come from the U.S. and are looking for the ability to have a tax benefit to giving. And so there's a lot more to it, of course, than that. But we are absolutely looking at a lot of those things. And as those get ironed out, we're able to launch this. You can register your interest now. If you register your interest, you, of course, will be notified when all of those things are opened up.
Thank you. So that's if you go to wordfest.live, you'll be able to see and put it in the diary, 23rd of July, 2021. So it's going to be, it's both speakers and sponsors at this point, is it?
Right. So that will be open very soon. Speaker sponsors and call for volunteers. I believe we're going to open shortly after that as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I add to that, actually? Just to anyone who's never done a talk or anything like that before, but has this feeling that they would love to try, but nervous about it, just submit an application to get involved and be a speaker, because I just cannot tell you the opportunities that can come out of doing these things that you would just not expect, and the people that you would meet. So, I spoke eventually at WordFest live last time. I dropped out, then I came back in, and Nathan did a fireside chat live interview with me. So that was interesting, because and a little story on that was that I had all my notes laid out all over my table, sticky notes everywhere, right? And I knew exactly, the order of things I was going to say. And Nathan, as he does, said something funny, made me laugh, and all my notes just blew off the table. I was like, suddenly there's a moment in the talk where my eyes just widen. But even from that talk, I know some actual opportunities that have turned up as a result of doing that. Stuff that you just don't expect. And you haven't got to go and stand on a physical stage, because it's online and you can pre-record it. And if you go and look at the different talks, you will see that there's people don't have the expectation that everyone's got like a studio or something there, because people are just doing their talks with a PowerPoint presentation and a webcam. And it's all about just the content. If you've got something good to share, you don't have to think, oh, it's not going to be as good as this person's thing or anything like that. Just if you've got something good to share, apply, and you never know what might happen. Yeah, Chris, it wasn't a fun moment when my notes flew off the table.
I was actually quite surprised that you didn't just say, "Can I just go and pick them up?" But we probably would have spent 3 minutes putting them all back into.
There was too many.
Note to self: put them in a laminated folder or something for next time.
Well, they were supposed to stick to the desk. They were supposed to stick to the desk, but they didn't, because when the Post-it notes have kind of bent.
Yes. Oh, yeah, the wind catches
so as a
underneath.
result of that, they weren't sticking to the desk. And I'll pull up a photo in a minute of it if I can find it. But
well, I am the speaker, the organizer for speakers, and I have a deputy this time. We've all got other people, so we have some redundancy in case anything happens to one of us. Megan Rose from Northeast Ohio. She's one of the organizers for WordCamp Northeast Ohio. She also is working with me on the speakers. And this time we're also introducing wellness talks, and so specific times every continent for wellness talks. And we're also going to be doing lightning talks, and we're going to be interviewing WordPress community members. So we're introducing different ways to be involved. So I love that you said that, Paul, because if you've never done it before and like the idea of doing a half-hour talk is a little overwhelming, then think about a lightning talk or volunteer to be interviewed and talk about what you're doing in WordPress.
I can guarantee anyone who does a lightning talk thinking, wow, that's too long, will be kind of running out of time by the end of their talk, thinking, I've got much more to say here. I found a photo of my notes on the table.
Oh my goodness.
There you go.
That presumably is pre the enormous explanation of air.
I laughed through my nose and blew them all off the table. So yeah, careful. Live is always dangerous, as we've found out today.
Powerful lungs.
I don't know now, Tim, where we go with this. Do I actually read your words in the comments as if you're saying them? So Tim is now saying, Tim, you seem to be in sync with me now, though, because you shrugged at the exact moment that I said it. So you can go for it now if you wish.
Okay. Well, I may or may not be in sync, but as someone who has done far too many talks, lightning talks are much harder. So if you are in fact going to do a talk, don't think doing a lightning talk is the easy version. You're basically going to try and do a full talk and do it in 6 minutes. That's almost impossible. So just go and put yourself in for a full talk. Jump in. You will enjoy it. I promise. Micehlle will make sure that you enjoy it. She's got, she will make sure you will enjoy it.
Yeah,
you will enjoy it.
Very supportive. Like, if you are worried about something, you can contact the Big Orange Heart team, the WordFest team, and say, I'm panicking about this talk or something, and they will help you.
We actually had somebody who had submitted a talk, and she was open about it. So Chris Ford submitted a talk, and she was struggling to actually record her talk. She has anxiety, like I have anxiety, and that was one of the things that was causing her anxiety. So I reached out to her. I said, "What if we did it as a conversation?" And I asked you questions, and so we recorded that. So I got on with her. I recorded it. She was able to say the things she wanted to say without the stress of sitting in front of it and filming a talk. So there's lots of ways that we can facilitate your sharing of information through a talk without it necessarily being overwhelming to create a PowerPoint and present it to the camera and pre-record it that way. And Tim, to speak to the idea of sometimes a lightning talk is harder, at least when you're recording them, as opposed to trying to do it live and you realize you've run out of time. When you record it, you do have the opportunity to make sure that you're succinct and that you can fit it all in. So there is that.
Tim's
He's just nodding.
That's fine. That's okay. Okay, I'm going to move to the last piece because we really have used up a very large amount of time, and this is one. I am so caught by this piece. I don't really know what to make of it. This is on WP Tavern again. It's by Sarah Gooding. It's called. So it kind of falls under the umbrella of security, really. Zerodium. temporarily triples payouts to $300,000 for WordPress exploits. Just read that again. $300,000 for WordPress exploits. Now, Zerodium is one of these businesses that, well, I kind of wish it didn't exist, but I can see why it exists. They're a kind of marketplace. If you're an expert hacker and you are able to let's say gain access to the Android OS or iOS or Mac OS or Windows or whatever it may be, you can choose to go two or three routes with that. You could deliver that vulnerability to the vendor and give them the appropriate 90 days or something and ask them to fix it. Or you could go to Zerodium and get paid a boatload of cash so that they can sell it to anybody. And you've got to assume that the anybody doesn't have our best interests at heart. So I don't really know why they've suddenly decided that they're going to, an exploit on WordPress. And I think basically this is a vanilla install of WordPress. Tim can probably fill us in. I'm sure he's got more detail than I have. But the idea that that is worth 300,000. Sorry, Tim, you take it.
Oh, no, that's really confusing because Paul told me to say type now, and then you kept on talking. Okay, I'm going to start again. Zerodium, basically buy and sell vulnerabilities, tripling it to 300,000. Just think about that for a second. 40% of the web. If you've got a hack that could take over 40% of the web, 300,000 is cheap.
Yeah, good point.
That's seriously cheap.
Yeah.
If you could just take over any WordPress website, that's going to cost. So from that perspective, it doesn't sound so bad. We're also talking about vanilla install with no plugins, no themes. You cannot have any user account on that site. Get in. That's hard. Let's even if we're talking about the XXE exploit that we were talking about earlier, that required you to at least set up your site in such a way as to allow someone from the front end to upload an MP3 file. That wouldn't have qualified for this bounty. It has to be something where they can literally drop the payload and get straight in. As for why it's now 300,000, well, I'm sure there are plenty of good, bad, well, I don't think there's any good actors, but there's plenty of bad actors and state actors who would love to have access to all those WordPress websites. You know, everything from the White House's website through to lots of medical research sites. And these are, they're not necessarily even aiming to target the WordPress website itself. They're just using that as a door into then pivot to other information. If you think of things like the Panama Papers hack, which was supposedly got by an exploit in WordPress that allowed them access to get enough information to get onto a secondary server, which then allowed them access to all that information. Similar thing could happen here. You've got vaccine research is a good example where you can imagine that some AstraZeneca with their nice front face WordPress facing website gets hacked. The marketing person's credentials gets leaked pivots onto their SharePoint server. And next thing, a rogue nation now has that data. I picked that at random. I have no idea whether AstraZeneca has a WordPress website, et cetera, et cetera. But you can see why it would that how much is that now worth to them if they know that that's one of their routes in. If you're a rogue nation, are you willing to pay 300,000? Of course you are. Are you willing to pay $1 million to get access to that sort of information? Probably. 10 million, 20. So you can, it's cheap. This is the scary part of that. As for should the company exist, it is always going to exist. You don't want to know about it. This idea of a grey market, you don't want it. But you know that if it wasn't this company, it would be another company. I wonder, do they pay tax?
That would, I very much doubt it. The exploits for, I think Android, certainly Sarah in the article mentioned that if you can get into Android, then it's 2.5 million, I think it was. Obviously, you know, that everybody's walking around with Android in their pockets. There's probably an awful lot of data to be had there. But I'm assuming that this price is reflective of the double-fronted marketplace that they must operate. In other words, they've got people coming to them saying, we will pay you X if you can deliver us WordPress on a platter. And then they turn around and say to the hacker community that they've got in their community, well, we're going to make it 300,000 because we've got a boatload of people just waiting to pay us for it. So you can only imagine if somebody does manage to do that exact task, I'm sure Zerodium will be rubbing their hands together for a payday much, much bigger than 300,000. But man alive. Oh.
They also can share that to multiple companies.
Yep.
So once they've got that exploit, they're the people in charge of it for distributing it. So they can then start distributing it out to multiple actors. They will also, the person who, they're saying, hey, we're going to, we'll take 300,000, give you 300,000 for this exploit. That's not what they're selling it for.
Yes.
They may well be selling that on at 2, 3, 4 million.
Yes. We're all in the wrong business, aren't we?
We are.
Should all, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, no, Tim probably could go and work for Zerodium, but has decided to do the right thing.
Maybe Tim does.
Yeah. Tim.
Yeah.
Bug bounties are a legitimate business, though. There are things like HackerOne exists.
Right.
WordPress, in fact, has a bug bounty scheme on HackerOne. So there is legitimate ways where you actually report the bugs to the organization whose bug it is, and then they can fix it. And so Zerodium gives bug bounties a bad reputation, which is unfortunate because bug bounties is a very effective tool in helping us find vulnerabilities. So and the security researchers themselves, the problem is that they're going to be surely tempted. If you're sitting there going, I have found this critical vulnerability in WordPress, yes, I will get some fame from, saying, hey, here's the vulnerability, and I might get some money from having a vulnerability in WordPress, but it's not going to be a massive amount. Or I could get 300,000 and a nice new house. That is a moral dilemma that is, unfortunate if you end up with it. And I suspect quite a few of us would publicly state that, no, I would never sell to them. And then privately, their other halves may be asking, why exactly are you not selling to them?
It's a life-changing amount of money. Nigel makes a really good point in the comments. He says, might be a lot easier to plant sleeper agents. We've never said the word sleeper agents on this podcast. We're getting a bit dark, but I'm loving it. Might be a lot easier to plant sleeper agents as core contributors and wait for an opportunity to sneak in vulnerabilities. Matt Mullenweg has been waiting for this day. He is, in fact, the Dark Lord, and he's been building this project to get to his target is 50% of the internet, and then he's just going to take it all down.
Now I need to wonder though if we need to worry about Nigel.
Yeah, Nigel knows. That's interesting though. Good grief, the plot thickens.
I'm sure Nigel's not the first person to have that idea though. I mean,
sure.
Us doing our kind of selling our time for money, while these people making, the people involved in things like Zerodium are just thinking on a different logical way than we are about how you get things done and how you achieve your goals and everything. So I think it's just a really interesting. I'm now frightened of what is going on in WordPress. It's
a proper career path. If you are good at hacking and you can turn up to these hacking, pwn to own and things, the teams, should I say, who manage to, I don't know, get out of Chrome's sandbox and things, and then on the next day they do something else, and then on the day after that they do something else, they walk away with millions. Well, not millions, but certainly hundreds of thousands. And then next year they turn up and do it all again. It's an actual career. I like the idea of doing those festivals though, where it's on display and everybody gets to see what's happened. This all seems a bit dark and murky. Let's hope one day, I shouldn't say this out loud because somebody will come and hack ours. Let's hope that one day Zerodium gets hacked, and we'll see how they like that. Expunge that from the record. I never said it. I don't want bad things to happen to me. Right. On that bombshell, I think we're done. We've had well over 1.5 hours. We normally do a quick, super quick thing at the end where we just say if anything's happening to us this week. So I'll start with you, Paul. Anything going on?
2 major things. One of them is finishing off my talk that is late for the pagebuildersummit.com. Is it pagebuildersummit.com?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
There it is.
And so I can't wait to finish that off. And then the other major important thing in my life is I've got a new set of blinds down there to put up in the next few days.
It's exciting
on
stuff
this window
over at the Lacey household. But thank you for your contributions to the summit.
This is my window. This is my blinds at the moment. This piece of cardboard.
It's doing good duty. I'd say that's pretty much enough.
Now. That's what happens. Oh, it's better.
Look,
it's better without the piece of cardboard, actually. So
yeah.
So big stuff
Tim,
happening.
What's happening to you this week?
So this week I have a hacked workshop. So I'm doing a workshop where we're going through how to fix hacked sites, how to identify them, etc., etc. There's still a space left if one more person wants to come and join us. Details are up on my site. But that's
tell us.
Pretty much me. I'm now deep into the weeds of that.
Tim, in the comment, the little private chat, will you put the URL where somebody could go and subscribe to that? By the way, we should say it's sponsored by Zerodium. Tim Nash, sponsored by It's not sponsored by Zerodium. If you put it in the chat, I'll mention it and put it in the show notes because we'd like to get that space filled. We don't want one empty space on that, do we? And Micehlle.
Well, first, how come when Paul took the cardboard out of his window, suddenly Tim had light in his face? I don't understand that connection. But,
I noticed that too. That was so bizarre. Yeah, sorry, Tim. Sorry about that. I'll put it back up in a minute.
I'm not sure if Nathan knows, but I believe I'm going to be speaking at the Page Builder Summit because I'm working with Weglot, and I think I'm going to be presenting on their behalf.
Oh, nice bit of synchronicity there. Thank you. That is good to know.
I need to put that together. I'm working with Tomas from Weglot, so I'm sure you'll be hearing from them about that soon. And
that is great to know.
Yeah, and other than that, I'm working on several different blog posts this week for Big Orange Heart, for Post Status, for GiveWP, and on my own website, Works by Micehlle.
Wow, there's a lot happening. I'm just going to be editing video this week for the the summit.
I like how you say just, like that doesn't take loads and buckets of time.
Actually, do you know what it is? There's a lot of Mac fan action. That's what I'm going to say. I was saying to Tim before we began, I've got a fairly old Mac. It's not prehistoric, but it's pretty old. It could do with an upgrade. And so when I render the videos, basically the fan comes on, and for the next 2 weeks, my fan will be really blowing a hurricane in this room. But hopefully it'll be worth it. Right, that's it. Do join us next week. I can't tell you who's on next week because I can't remember, but it'll be me and Paul and a couple of other people. But it's been very nice having you again. Sorry about the technical difficulties to those people listening, and particularly to Tim, who's had to put up with the horrible lag. At least there wasn't an echo. And he's shrugging, so that's good. It's not too bad. Now we reach that moment in the show where we have to awkwardly wave as I press the end broadcast button with no conception of how long it's going to take for the show to end. Could be 2 seconds, could be 20 seconds. So let's wave, and I'll say goodbye.
Goodbye.